Hey, welcome to the BK Show podcast. This is episode number 16, and today I'm joined by the founder of SpyGuy.com, Alan Walton. I met Alan at e-commerce Fuel, and we started talking about all kinds of things, went down a bunch of rabbit holes, and I knew I wanted to have him on the podcast and really dive deeper into his story. Alan's a very unique guy. He has a crazy start where he was working with the television show Cheaters. He also was on the Ferriss Show, and very late in the episode we talk a bunch about travel miles and all the things you should be doing when you're running an online business to maximize your travel miles and really travel the world for free and be sitting in first class when you do so. This is a longer episode, but I think you're going to enjoy every minute of it. And again, stick around to the end if you want to learn about travel miles. I think you'll learn a ton from Alan, and hopefully, get in touch with him and work with his company FlyGuy as well. Something he's passionate about is, helping people utilize these miles and be able to travel the world. He's doing a lot of cool things with these miles with his employees as well. Look, this whole episode's awesome. I hope you enjoy every minute of it. I would love for you to reach out and tell me your favorite part. And again, I'm giving away books from our last episode with Justin Christensen. If you haven't listened to that episode, he's the founder of Conversion Fanatics. Go back and listen to that. I'm giving away some of his books, and all you need to do is join my email list. And I've created a pretty link for the website that will be coming eventually. AuthenticEcommerce.com goes right to my email list opt-in page. And so sign up there. That'll get you entered to grab a copy of Justin's book. But for now, sit back and enjoy this conversation I had with the founder of SpyGuy, Alan Walton. Welcome to the show, buddy. How you been?
Thanks. Everything's going great. Business is good. Personal life's great. And we've never really had a long period of chatting with each other. So I'm looking forward to that. Me too.
I mean, I met you at e-commerce Fuel in New Orleans, and you're mysterious. Have you ever been described as mysterious? Like, you have this gorgeous hair. You're I don't know how to describe you. You're very unique.
Somebody described me as as a very interesting ethnicity. What was it? I'm already butchering it, but a lot of times people try to guess like what ethnicity I am, I guess, and they just always ask in a really weird way, and it always takes me off guard. It happens enough that like I'm used to it, but it happens infrequently enough that like it still kind of like makes me laugh when it gets brought up.
We're in a weird world, right? Like, that's almost not PC to ask you that question.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, but yeah, the comments about the hair, that happens a lot too.
Well, you do have some glorious hair. What do you do? What is your daily hair grooming routine? I'm going to make sure that the photo of this podcast shows your hair in all its glory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I just put conditioner in it, and then I put a bunch of products that's marketed for people with curly hair, and then I guess it just works out. Nothing tricky about it.
No, but
a lot of people ask me if I like have a perm or like if I dye my hair gray, and I'm like, no, I don't do anything, man. I just take a shower like everybody else.
Well, not everybody else, but I'm glad you do. I talked to you in the lobby. I kind of knew of you, I think, and we'll probably talk about it as we go on. You were one of the first people I remember talking about points. How to use your credit cards the right way. And so that's how I knew of you. You were this mythic creature long before I knew you were an actual human being. And so we talked a little bit in the lobby. You actually really helped me with some point stuff that day that I kind of want to dive into a little bit later on. But you probably have way more knowledge than what you bestowed upon me in there. And then I think, we got to talk again in San Antonio. The joke is, you gave me COVID back then. We don't have to go too deep into that, but somebody told me you were really sick. I left really sick anyway. So it was cool to get to talk to you, but I'm glad to be able to have you on the show and really pick your brain.
Yeah, definitely. Whatever you want to go over.
So you are the owner of SpyGuy.com. That's where I want to start, man. That is one of the most interesting niches I think anybody could possibly be in. And I'd love to know, like, how did you even begin getting into spy products? And I know there's been some ups and downs and headaches along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of it's an interesting story, I guess you could say. When I was growing up, my grandparents would take us to this place up in Plano, Texas. I'm from Richardson, which is just like a suburb of Dallas. There's this chain called the Original Pancake House. It's not IHOP. It's like a separate thing. And my grandparents used to take us for breakfast over there. And there was this store next door that just said Spy Supply on the outside of the building, and the windows were tinted. It looked really sketchy, but I was a young kid and I kind of thought it was cool, but I was too scared to go inside. Like, that was just how I was. I took a lot of pleasure in just like kind of peeking through the windows, and then they had the list of the stuff that they sold. So they did like CCTV equipment, GPS trackers, hidden cameras, bug detectors. And I'm like, oh wow, that's like really wild. Like, what a weird world we live in. And then I'd like go inside and like eat pancakes and forget all about it. Well, many years later, I had graduated from high school. I was going to community college. I got really lazy and I forgot to schedule classes for the spring semester, I guess, at the community college. And my mom was really unhappy with me. And she's like, okay, well, if you're not going to college, then you need to get a job. And I'm like 21 or something at this point, and my mom's telling me to get a job. I was like crazy about video games at the time, just lived at home, and just not a whole lot going for me, right? And my mom's telling me I got to get a job. And we go back to this pancake place, right? Because we're meeting my grandma there. And they have a sign out front that says, now hiring. And so my mom grabbed me an application and I filled it out and dropped it off. Didn't hear anything back from them. And I decided to go in one day, and I ended up chatting with the co-owner. I didn't know she was a co-owner. Was kind of surprised actually that that the spy shop was owned by a woman. It just kind of like took me off guard, I guess. And we had a conversation, and she was really cool. And I guess she liked me because I ended up getting the job. And that was basically how I learned about the whole niche and security equipment. So they really focused on like CCTV equipment for homes and businesses and whatnot. But they also had the cooler stuff, like they had safes that were disguised as like other items and stuff. So like a mantle clock, but it's got like space inside so you can put your gun in it. They had tasers, stun guns, bug detectors, cameras, and the clientele were really interesting too. Like, we would have police departments come in and buy stuff. You'd get celebrities that wanted to come in, and just, it was kind of like a novelty store as well. And that's how I learned about the industry. That's how I learned about sales. That's how I learned about managing inventory and talking with customers and finding out the best products for them. It was a really great experience.
So was this the same one you kept looking at as a kid?
The exact same one, yeah.
And then at 21, you're like, I'm finally going to go in there at 21 years old. And the day you go in there, the very first time you get a job?
Yeah.
It seems a little fortuitous, right?
It's pretty weird, right? I've always had that come up in life too. Like, there will be like a building that I pass by. Like, I remember one time these apartment complexes were being built. And I'm like, dude, those look so cool. And then 10 years later, I ended up moving into it just because it happened. That I needed to live in that area, and those were some nice apartments. And there was something about the fact that I kind of watched those get built 10 years ago, and then I ended up living there. And that's just always happened in life, where like later on, you end up like working somewhere or living somewhere or becoming friends with somebody that you always wanted to be friends with. Like, I don't know. It's just funny how that happens, I guess.
What are you paying attention to now? What is catching your eye now, so I know where you're going to be in 5 years?
I have no idea. I'm just kind of winging it like everybody else at the moment. But
that's the truth, man.
Yeah. I just, keep my ear to the ground, keep an eye on Twitter, see what other people are getting excited about, and, decide if that's worth paying attention to.
So you're back there, you're working, like, how does that lead, like, as you're like learning the products and dealing with, I have to assume, some bananas customers, like, how does that lead to you actually wanting to sell these products?
Yeah. Oh, you mean like on my own store?
Yeah. How does working at a shop like that turn into SpyGuy.com?
Yeah. So I had worked at that shop for almost 2 years, I think. And they actually had a chain of stores. So like the one that I always went to, it was in Plano, but they had 3 other locations. And about 6 months after I started working there, they fired a guy that managed one of the other stores in a different city, and they made me the manager. And I was literally the only guy in the store for like 9-10 hours a day or whatever. And so I ran that entire store for like 18 months or something like that. And while I was at that store, the producer for a popular reality TV show at the time, it was called Cheaters. It's like if you're up at 1 a.m. or whatever and you need something on TV, there would be this late night reality show called Cheaters, which is about private, investigators following people that are suspected of like cheating on their spouses or girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. And one day the producer and the detective for the show came in and they were like, hey, we think that it would be really cool to have spy shops across the United States because we get all these people that watch our TV show and they want to hire private investigators, but that's not our line of work. But maybe we could like sell them products instead so that they can do their own investigation. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I didn't like the idea of doing brick and mortar stores as franchises, which is what they originally wanted. And I felt like the internet was probably the better option. And so I said, if we do an e-commerce store, then I'd love to do that. And like 24 hours later, I like handed in my resignation and then worked for another 2 weeks and then went off to start this online spy shop for a TV show.
So were they trying to like broker a deal with you guys to sell products for them, or were they trying to acquire you at the time?
Oh, so they were trying to do a deal with the owners of the security chain that I worked at. And I thought it was cool. Like they wanted to rebrand them as like Cheater Spy Shop. And I guess my boss didn't want to do that. And after that, they just approached me instead and were like, hey, can you recreate this? And I was like, yeah, definitely. But I think doing it online is going to be the better play because, then they could actually like advertise for the show or for the website in the show, which is what they did. They ran commercials for the website in the television show. And then we didn't have to have like all these leases and brick and mortar arrangements or franchises or whatever it was. Like it just seemed like a nightmare. And the biggest competitor to the spy store that I was working at, the biggest competitor was online. And my boss was constantly complaining about how he totally missed the boat on selling online. And so when the opportunity came up, I was like, okay, maybe I can go ahead and do this because now I have the weight of like a TV show behind me. And so I worked for them for a few years, 3 years. And then I started SpyGuy after deciding to part ways with those guys. I want to work for myself. Work environment wasn't like super great. And plus they kind of had a lot of like paranoid people calling and or like emailing and contacting. It's a really weird space, first of all. And then on top of that, like working for a reality TV show, it just kind of like compounded into this weird thing. I got really burnt out on it and I had kind of gotten bit by the entrepreneur bug and I didn't have any equity in the company either. Like I was young and I didn't know any better. And so I started this like 7-figure business for somebody and I didn't own any of it. And well,
what a learning experience, right? Be able to like cut your teeth on e-commerce and learn all of that stuff with somebody financially supporting you. Yeah,
absolutely. OPM is what my dad would always say, which is you're learning on other people's money. And I absolutely did. That's how I got started in e-commerce. I learned how to, we ended up building on the Yahoo small business, which nobody's using anymore. But it was like the best e-commerce platform at the time. And they had like a For Dummies book on it. I remember driving around to all the Barnes and Noble locations in Dallas trying to get a copy of this book so I could figure out how to start an online business. And because I didn't know anything about it. And I got to learn about that. Got to learn about hiring ad agencies and what works and what doesn't. And just running an online store and, cutting purchase orders to Asia and all this other stuff. Like it was a really great learning experience that I'm not sure I could have gotten it another way.
It's a weird situation in so many ways, right? Number one, nowadays, like you can go on YouTube and learn anything, right? Anything at all. If there's anybody listening to this that hasn't started, go to YouTube and like you have no excuses anymore. And then the other side is you were talking in the beginning how you sell CCTVs and like SpyGuy isn't just for spying on your cheating spouse, right? But like Cheaters comes along and like that's how they're marketing this. That's their messaging, right? So you're only going to get the crazy people or the paranoid people. You're not going to get other folks who just want to have a camera on their front door. This is long before like that became normal. Most of my neighbors have, a Ring doorbell, or I'm looking out my window right now. They have a camera like on their backyard. Like it's totally normal now.
Yeah.
And you specifically were working for somebody who was, putting out their spotlight and saying, all the crazies come here. Like that had to be super, super interesting to like build a store for that,
Yeah. It was definitely tailored for that. And fortunately, that's like, keep an eye on your family is still like a part of the business that we do. That just like customers want the product that's going to do that, right? And we happen to sell it. And but fortunately, like our client base is just like really diverse. Like there's people who are getting harassed at work and they need proof, and so they get something from us. Or like we do business with the FBI, Department of Justice, law enforcement agencies, most of our customers, like 90% of them are just regular people. They got some problem going on, or like they're business owners and somebody's stealing something and they want to know who, or somebody destroyed their Trump sign or their Biden sign on their lawn and they want something to catch it. Or like, we get people that call and they're like, hey, I saw that you can like rig your political sign to electrocute somebody. And how do you do that? And we're like, I don't know how to do that. But yeah, maybe there's a YouTube video for that. But yeah, you're right. All that stuff that's common nowadays was like Shopify didn't exist when I started that store. That wasn't a thing. Actually, they did exist, but they probably had like 3 employees.
What year was this? When you switched to SpyGuy?
Well, SpyGuy I started in 2014. Then the online store for the reality show, that was in 2011. And so back then it was like all about Yahoo Small Business. And it was about like I couldn't do anything at all to tweak my website. I would have to have a developer for every single thing. And there weren't YouTube videos showing you this stuff at all. And the book that talked about doing this was like 3 years outdated. Like it was a lot harder like 10 years ago. And also the products weren't as good. Like to be able to actually view your camera real time on your iPhone in 2011, that was like cutting edge stuff. And it was really expensive. And on top of that, it didn't apply to a lot of the stuff that we were selling, like the hidden cameras. Like everybody wanted to be able to view it from your phone. Mm-hmm. Like, and you just couldn't do that at all unless you had like, I don't even know how to do this, but you would have to like set up your router for like port forwarding and then set up like a dedicate like a static DNS. I don't know. It was really hard. And nowadays you just like scan a QR code and suddenly you can like beam it to everybody on the internet, like in 5 minutes of unboxing.
Thinking back, like I think I'm 36. How old are you?
I'm 32. Okay.
I mean, just thinking back to like, I graduated high school and I had one of those Nokia flip phones that you could just like, walkie-talkie people, right? And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And like thinking how far we've come in 20 years, do you ever like project out 20 more and wonder where we're going to be? Like the fact that you're saying 10 years ago, you couldn't watch your camera on your phone. And now like there's 2 little 5-year-olds in my house that we can see whether they're sleeping or not by looking on our phone, right? Like it's crazy to think where we're going to be in 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah. Who knows? I have no idea. I have a friend that thinks about that stuff all the time. His name's Taylor Pearson. He's actually, I've been using him for my business coach this year, and he thinks about all that stuff. That wasn't a plug, by the way. You can edit if you need to.
No, I recognize the name from Twitter. What does Taylor do?
Yeah, Taylor Pearson. I think he just sits in a room and thinks about things, to be honest. But he wrote a really cool book that I recommend to people who are thinking about entrepreneurship. It's called The End of Jobs. And he kind of talks about how like, okay, what's going to happen in 5 years when now that everyone's working remotely and you can get really great talent in the Philippines for like a fraction of the price as the United States. Like you kind of have this like weird, this economy opening up where you might be in a job that is just going to get outsourced in a couple of years. Like maybe right now it's not, but in the future it might be. And one of the things he talked about was like self-driving vehicles, specifically like 18-wheelers and whatnot, truckers. That I think something like 5 million people I could be totally wrong. I think it's like 5 million people drive 18-wheelers just delivering stuff, logistics and whatnot. And what are self-driving cars going to do? Like once they aren't getting in accidents all the time and whatnot, but like what happens if all of those people lose their jobs? Like what are they going to do? Like, what if AI just makes a bunch of different jobs obsolete?
So have you thought about this? Because I've spent a little
No.
time. So if you look back, like when agriculture revolution happened, we used to all have to be out in the fields, right? Like there was a ton of work to do in order to make agriculture a thing. And then slowly but surely machines came along, right? And made all of those jobs go away. And we adjusted, right? We moved forward. I think I don't want to look at it in a negative light, because all of those jobs are certainly going to be obsolete, truck drivers, and there's probably a whole lot of others, but that allows us to like get more time to think about more complex issues. Or you can go the other way, right? And become more of a bum, I guess. But I try to look at it in, we're not going to just sit around and play video games because we have nothing to do and enjoy our UBI. We're going to, have time to think about how we can do even greater things, which are going to open up more jobs. Like, I mean, just if the world went, more green, right? Like that's going to create a ton more jobs. It's going to remove a bunch of jobs, but it's going to create a ton more jobs. And, I don't know. There's definitely, hopefully smarter people than me thinking about this stuff. But yeah, no, I just pulled up Taylor on my screen. I've definitely seen him around. I don't follow him apparently, but I've definitely seen that profile photo on Twitter often.
Cool. Yeah, he's a cool guy and he has a lot of really cool ideas. But I don't think too much about future related stuff. I don't think I'm smart enough to. And plus, I'm really trying to focus on present related stuff, because I tend to realize all of this stuff is fleeting. Enjoy it while it lasts. Like future stuff, somebody else can think about that. I'm not going to be building the future or anything like that. Right now, I just need to focus on, my friends, my family, doing what I can to make things better. But I don't really think that predicting the future's my strong suit.
Well, we can easily go off on tangents. I know we could. Let's go back, right? So you leave, the reality show, building their thing. Like, what was it like, when you decide to leave and start your own thing? Obviously you got the entrepreneurial bug, but I've been there. I know for a fact it's scary as shit to take the leap, right? Like you can stand on that cliff edge and look over at the beautiful blue water all the time. And I did for years. I'm sure you did too, of wonder what it's like over there. But to actually jump off and just jump in and go for it, that could have been easy.
Yeah. And, I think my jump wasn't as hard as most other people's are. Because I hear these stories about other people who quit their jobs and it just seems a lot riskier than mine. With my situation, okay, so in the last few months before I leave this job, workplace situation, not super great. I'm kind of having a falling out with a guy that owns the company. I don't even work at the same location, so we're not getting any FaceTime. Relationships just deteriorated. I'm just not having a good time. And I started thinking about all the cool people that I've met while I ran that business, right? And all of them were really encouraging when I told them that I wasn't happy with that job. I kind of wanted to go start my own thing. I wasn't even sure what that thing was. Fortunately, I had a friend, his name's Rob. He actually wrote the book for starting a Yahoo store for dummies, the same book that I just mentioned. After I found a copy of that book at Barnes & Noble, it had his email in it. And so I emailed him and I'm like, hey, I bought your book. Is there anything I need to know that's outdated or whatever? But he's like, nah. And we actually became friends, and we met at events, and he was one of the first people I told when I was thinking about quitting the job. And he actually sat down with me with a yellow legal pad at lunch in Las Vegas. We were attending a conference, and he just came up with a list of all the different ideas that I could pursue, SEO related stuff or PPC management, just all the different things that I learned about e-commerce. Because I still wanted to do something e-commerce related. I was just tired of spy stuff. And I was, I was thinking about how could I help other e-commerce entrepreneurs with stuff that I know, instead of going on and starting a new store or getting a job. And
service-based businesses? Yeah,
service-based. Because I didn't have a whole lot of money saved up, and inventory and manufacturing sounded like a real capital intensive thing. Yeah. But he sat down with me and then he pulled we hopped on the phone. We did a screen share for 3 hours one day. And he showed me everything that was going on behind the scenes of his business. And it really opened up my eyes to the possibilities of if I had started my own thing. And so I ended up handing in a resignation, stayed for 2 weeks. And then I walked out of the office and I had no plan. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I just knew that I had to do something. And I spent about 4 weeks just like decompressing, I guess you could say, and just like thinking about what I wanted to do. And, I had already read the 4-Hour Workweek once or twice before this, but I read through it again and I took like detailed notes about every chapter. And I just decided to stick with what I knew, which was, running a spy shop. And I just decided to come up with my own version of that and start brainstorming, seeing what domains were available. I went through the fear setting exercises in 4-Hour Workweek. I didn't adjust my living style or my living expenses at all. And so like I was burning through my savings real quick without having an income. And so I was trying to hustle as quickly as I could. And I ended up starting on Shopify, read a couple of books on running my own ads, Google shopping, text ads, learned about SEO and whatnot, and then launched the store probably 3 months after I quit my job. And that was it. I already had experience in this space though, which is something that I always want to say, because like I'd already run an online spy shop and then I started another online spy shop. So I kind of already knew what I was doing. Whereas a lot of people, like, they bounce from their job or whatever, or like they start a new business with, they have a greater risk. So I always really admire people that do that.
But the Cheaters store, was that also drop shipping products? Like, were you already familiar with the concepts? Like you mentioned 4-Hour Workweek, right? He talks a lot about building a drop shipping business in there. Is that something you already knew how to do, or is that a new thing? And then you moved to Shopify, or like that was a whole new thing, right?
Yeah, I'd actually never done drop shipping. We had all of our own inventory at the time. So we were doing all our own fulfillment and whatnot. And when I started my own thing, I had $10,000 and I went ahead and purchased a bunch of inventory. And, I wasn't even smart enough to buy like shelving for my second bedroom. All the product was just like thrown on the ground, and then I'd have to hunt for it when I went to ship it after it sold on the website.
At least you kind of knew what was selling, right? You knew what to buy. So you weren't drop shipping at all when you started?
No, I wasn't drop shipping at all.
When did you learn the concept of drop shipping then? Because I'm sure that was like, light bulb went off of like, I don't need to spend my money anymore.
Yeah. Well, none of the providers in this is a really weird space. I cannot emphasize this enough. But there was nobody like really doing drop shipping. I did have one vendor that would drop ship, but I was selling so little from them that I don't really count that. All the other vendors, they if you wanted to order something, you had to order in quantities of like 10, or some of them were like 100 or more. You couldn't just do a drop shipping order. And so, yeah, I'd read about drop shipping somewhere, but nobody was doing that in my space. And I hadn't really looked to selling anything other than security equipment, I guess.
I imagine this whole time you were drop shipping. So are you drop shipping anything now? Like, no. Did the industry come along?
No, it hasn't. Nobody's doing it.
I just assumed you were drop shipping, right? Like, look at your store. I wouldn't have guessed you had a warehouse somewhere or a 3PL, or I just assumed you were drop shipping all the products.
Nah, we do all of our own fulfillment. There's a guy, 2 offices, behind 2 walls. I can't even speak English right now. There's a guy named Dale who's packing and shipping orders right now in the next room over.
Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, that's a whole like different headache, right? So,
yeah,
that had to lead to some serious cash flow issues in the beginning if you only started with 10 Gs. Oh,
loads. Right? Yeah, it was always annoying to deal with that because we were always growing, and I didn't have any credit. Like, I couldn't get anyone to give me money to fund purchase orders and stuff, and so we were just always reinvesting the money that was coming in into placing bigger purchase orders to keep up with inventory demands and whatnot. And most of that's leveled off right now. Well, up until about 6 months ago, at least, everything was predictable, and then things dropped like a cliff. In March.
Wait, you dropped in COVID? I would assume people got even more crazy about what was going on in their relationships and things as we're all bottled up,
The first 2 months, we were down 50%. And then we've really bounced back since then. So we've had 4 of our best sales months ever after that initial drop. But I'm not sure how much that is due to COVID or not, because a lot of our sales were coming from people in the workplace, and that's largely not back yet. At least, I mean, like, I don't know if we're still getting those sales or not, but it seems like most businesses aren't doing a whole lot of face-to-face stuff still, right? And so, like, all the people that used to call, they were like, yeah, I need to record something that's going on at work. Like, are they still purchasing? Because they're not going to the office. So I really don't know. But yeah, we've also had like a major competitor, like they went under, and I don't know, there's just so many different variables that I can't really attribute it to any one thing. But yeah, business has been good the last few months.
Well, you're the first person I've heard that took a dip. Other than like service-based industries, I had Justin Christensen on last week's show from conversionfanatics.com. He said the same thing. Like in March, you know, when it was very uncertain, everybody canceled. And then a month later, they were like, holy shit, it's Black Friday every single day. We need a CRO guy coming in here. And so literally every e-commerce store that I know is up. It's been wild. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think more people are buying. Perhaps they are because they're bored. I know there's a lot of Amazon boxes on my doorstep every day. Yeah. But I think it's just everything shifting to e-commerce, which is, you know, good news for all of us who got there early.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we had that initial drop. Like, it really scared the crap out of me. Like, I rounded up everybody here and I was like, hey, you guys need to, like, I'm giving you the warning right now. Like, I might need to let all of you guys go and like go back to being one man band, which like really terrified me because I didn't want to do that. I thought I was done with that. Fortunately, it didn't come to it and everyone's still here. But yeah, I was really scared. 50% drop. Like, we can't support that.
So I got to ask, you said you started in 2014 on SpyGuy, and I think it was a different URL back then, right?
SpyGuySecurity.com. Yeah.
But you started on Shopify. I started in 2015 in January, and I started on Shopify because it was the only thing I knew. The course I took said start on Shopify. Were you smart enough to buy any Shopify stock at all in 2015 at $30?
You can go back. So we're both members of e-commerce Fuel.
Yep.
And you can go back and you can find that thread where people are talking about Shopify IPOing. And I was in there and I was like, dude, this is the best. I was telling everyone I knew to buy this stock. But I don't really play stock market stuff. Like, I have a Wealthfront account and that's about it. But when Shopify IPO'd, like, I didn't have any money. So I didn't invest in it at all.
Well, I just started, you know, towards the middle of 2015, once I got rolling on my 3D printer store, I was making maybe $1,000, $2,000 a month or whatever. And if I would have just taken $30, just one stock a month, in something I clearly believed in, I was pumping it on. At that point, I had started a podcast. People were using my affiliate link to sign up, even just using my affiliate commissions to go buy like equity in this business. I don't know. I feel like an idiot now that it's at, you know, $1,100.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't have any money.
But even now, I bet if we did this again in 5 years, we'd be like, man, we were talking about it at 1,100. We didn't buy it. Maybe it's going to be at $4,000 by then, you know?
Yeah. Well, again, like when Shopify dropped a lot, I think it was like in the mid 300s or something like that back in March, maybe. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I would totally buy right now, but I just lost 50% of my business. I can't be buying Shopify stock right now. So. Yeah. So
SpyGuy Security, and you moved to SpyGuy. Can you, like, changing URLs is something I often get asked about in my consulting clients, and it kind of sounds like it sucks. Do you care to touch on whether it sucked or not?
Yeah, you're mainly talking about like from an organic standpoint.
I mean, did your organic rankings drop? What was you can go on Shopify and just change your URL willy-nilly anytime you want to, but was there any headaches involved in changing that? Did you have to change your business structure?
Yeah, I remember thinking that this is going to be a big headache, like as I was doing it, because, well, there's a lot that goes into it. You get worried about messing something up, like with 301 redirects or who knows. Plus, like all the HTTPS and the www, like I just don't even know really. But I guess I did enough research that I felt comfortable with it. I pulled the trigger. The thing is, like from an organic standpoint, like we weren't getting any organic traffic when I changed the domain several years ago. And so I was like, look, organic's barely making up any of our sales whatsoever. In the future, I want it to make up way more. But doing this in the future is going to be more of a headache if that's the case. And so let's just go ahead, do this thing. It's a 6-letter domain. It sounds like a really cool, like just to be able to say my website, spyguy.com. When I give people my email address, I think it's the coolest thing. And they ask what I do, like they think I'm a detective or whatever. But yeah, it's just SpyGuy. Sounds really simple. And SpyGuy Security is just really long.
Did you have to pay a boatload for the domain?
Yeah, they were asking for like 30,000 initially, and I don't know how much you want to get into this. I think this is an interesting topic, the whole domain stuff. But I saw that it was available, and I emailed them, and we exchanged a few emails back and forth, and they like didn't want to budge at all from 30. I originally like created like a fake email account. You know what?
Yeah.
I probably went to like Reddit or something like that to find out the best negotiating tactics for a $30,000 domain. And dude, Gmail account, act like I'm really not that interested. Lowball with like a $1,000 offer or whatever.
1,000.
I don't know what I was doing. I'm just winging it still. And basically, they came back and they're like, yeah, not interested. I think I ended up getting it closer to like 5,000. And they're like, oh, well, if you want to meet us at like 27,000, then we could do that. And we had like a back and forth. And then finally I was like, hey, look, I already own SpyGuySecurity.com. I've got a trademark for SpyGuy, which we can talk about that. I don't know if you know much about this sort of thing, but I had the trademark for SpyGuy, and I think that might have helped me more than I realized at the time. But I'm like, look, I own SpyGuy. They were marketing it like they'll like on the website where they're trying to sell it. They'll say like what space it's in, and they were trying to say that it was like dating related. And I was like, look, nobody's going to want to start a dating website on SpyGuy.com. Like, who's going to want to pay $30,000 for this domain other than me? Like, I already own SpyGuySecurity.com. And I eventually got them to come down to like 14,000.
It's pretty good though, right? How long did that take to get them down there?
Pretty good. That whole thing wrapped up in like 3 weeks.
That's like, pretty good timing.
We had a few emails. We didn't exchange more than like a dozen emails. So
look, I've heard different stories. I won't name names, and maybe if I have him on the podcast, he can tell the story. But a friend of mine owned something similar, right? SpyGuy Securities. And SpyGuy is like their brand name that they've been using everywhere. And so the person that owned SpyGuy, they couldn't strike a deal with. They wanted like $35,000. And they see that person decides to put it on an auction website, right? So they create an account and they start monitoring. And it's only at like $6,000. I think it got up to $8,000. And so right at the last minute, they were going to bid $8,001, right? And they click to bid with like a minute to go. And it says, sorry, you need to confirm your account. This takes 48 hours for you to be able to bid. The website sells for $8,000. And then they have to go to that person and they end up buying it for $35,000. So I was like, yeah. So there's there's horror stories in there of not getting your way. It sounds like you got your way. I'd be pretty happy at 14. I think
I lucked out. Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about it, and ever since then, I've just heard more and more weird domain stories, and the whole industry just seems super sketchy. Which I'm already in a sketchy industry, and like I look at domains, and I'm like, oh, what the? Because like I had to wire money to like Cayman Islands or whatever, and I'm like, oh,
what?
This feels so dirty. Yeah,
that does sound dirty.
Yeah.
I think people are all over that. If you look at, the Washington Redskins got canceled, right? And so they had to change their name to the Washington football team because some guy went and bought every Washington blank domain. I bought zoomwithben.com. That goes to my Zoom room because I saw someone else do it. And my friend Tom did it. Leanna Patch has Zoom with Leanna. My friend and now partner Leighton Taylor has zoomwithleighton.com. And so I started looking. I was like, oh, that's kind of a good idea. Maybe I should go buy these and sell them. Somebody was all over that. Like any Zoom with anything is already gone. I don't understand that world either. Mike Jackness, too. We bought a treadmill-desk.com. And he has a gazillion links that say treadmill desk, right? And you can get away with it when it's in your URL. And so we ended up buying that from him in order to build out a content site.
Yeah, Mike helped me with SpyGuy, actually.
Really?
He was the only guy I knew that did domain-related stuff, and I traded a few emails with him. And he's like, yeah, man, I think $15,000 is a great investment for that domain. And so I took him up on that. And Mike's a great guy. Really like him a lot, and he's been so helpful. But yeah, he helped me seal the deal on that one. Are
you part of his communities at all, Ecom Crew?
I listen to podcasts, so I guess you could say I'm part of the community. That's about it, though. I listen to his podcast. I trade texts with him. I'll say one really cool thing about Mike is that he's so open, right? And he's so friendly. And what's really, really cool is the first time I met him, we'd never spoken before. I was chatting with him, and I'm like, man, I really need a vacation. I haven't. This is like a 3 or 4 years ago. And I'm like, man, I could really use vacation. He's like, oh, you want to stay at my place in Costa Rica? I was like, are you for real? And he goes, yeah, we were going to go down, but we're not going to anymore. And I got to stay in his place in Costa Rica for like 7 days with some friends of mine. Yeah, we all flew down and crashed at his place, and he didn't even know me.
So I chatted with him a little bit in New Orleans, and then Wednesday night, Taylor Holiday put together this poker crew, and Mike in the beginning was playing every week.
I heard you cleaned up.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't seen Mike in quite a while, and that's as far as I know him. But you just made me like Mike a whole lot more. Like, that's really cool, man. Like, he's never met you before. Probably talked to you on ECF, I assume. But other than that,
a couple messages, yeah.
But other than, like, just to be like, yeah, here, go to Costa Rica. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, that nothing like that had really happened to me before. Somebody just being like, yeah, you can just go stay at my place down there, and that. Like, one thing I've noticed is like, I didn't grow up like having a lot of money or anything like that. But as I've gotten more successful in life and I've met more successful people, everyone's like really nice and generous and like with what they have and wanting to help other people out and just doing stuff like that. Like, I've come across a lot of people that have places in like Europe or, like a cabin somewhere or whatever, and just letting people stay at their place. Like, it's really cool to have friends that'll let you do that sort of thing. But Mike did it without me even like really knowing him at all. Just a random offer to stay at his place in Costa Rica. I'm like, man, some people are just really cool.
I think the entrepreneurship community is really cool in general, man. Honestly, like, it took me 30 years to like discover this is what I'm kind of good at and what I really enjoy geeking out about. And I fit in, right? I never felt like I fit in, and I fit in this community. Just everybody's so nice and giving, and they're all just giving everything away for free, right? Everybody just wants to help everybody. So, like, I don't want to get political on here, but there's quite a movement to hating billionaires and rich people, and I don't know. I totally disagree that they're greedy, and everyone I've met isn't. They just want to give away everything they have, and they want to help as many people as possible. And
yeah, absolutely.
I love this community, man.
Too. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to call Mike today and let him know I've been looking at Costa Rica for a vacation and ask his opinion on it. See what he said.
He lived down there for a while, so
really okay,
yeah,
nice. So look, I don't want to spend too much time on SpyGuy, but one of the questions I did have for you is, like, I see you on Twitter telling random stories, and I'm like, as far as your customers are bananas, and I'm wondering if you have like a top 2 or 3 that when anybody talks to you about SpyGuy, you're like, these are my 3 go-to stories of kind of crazy customers.
I always think of one in particular because so you get wild, crazy stories, but you also get a lot of sad stuff. And so I'll try not to bring the mood down too much or anything like that. But there's this one woman that always stands out because she bought a GPS tracker because she thought her husband was cheating on her, and they had 3 kids that were all grown up, like in high school and college and whatnot. And they'd been together for decades. And her husband was like a surgeon, and she thought he was running around on her. And she bought this tracker, put it on his vehicle, gets back to me like 48 hours later, and she's like, yeah, so I found out my husband has a secret apartment down the street from the hospital that he works at, and he's been taking hospital employees over there during like shift breaks and whatnot. And so she like confronted him about it, and I just remember how sad she was about the whole situation. And this was like years and years and years ago, and I still think about her. And like, I know her name and everything like that, but I would never reach out. But I just remember like, wow, these products can really tell you a bunch of stuff that maybe you wish you didn't know, or maybe she did want to know. I'm not sure, but yeah, there are a lot of people that find out things that they wish that they didn't really know, and that's reflected in some of the reviews on our website. Like, you look at a product, and like, there are people that are like, hey, this product really works. Just be ready for, you might see something that you ended up not wanting to see at all, or learn something new. So that's one thing.
It's got to be hard, man. Like, I'm sure you answered the phones for a while, right? We all did in the beginning of our businesses.
Oh yeah.
And so anybody who had this happen to them, they want to talk to somebody about it, right? They want to tell that story because it's, it helps them get it off their chest. So I'm assuming you heard a lot of stories, right? That has to be hard on you. Like, it has to.
I've been in this for 11 years. Yeah.
But your days have to end in like, fuck. Like, there has to be a lot of that emotion. You know what I mean? Of like, You're happy that you're making money, or you're happy that you're serving people, and you're helping them find out. In the end, this is probably good that you helped them find out, but you have to have a lot of weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, I joke a lot of times because we have like a call center. Our folks work from home, but I've got 3 people answering the phones, answering questions, and we kind of joke that the role is like part-time therapist because everyone wants to unload whatever like stress it is that they're going through, like at work, or like they're trying to keep an eye on their kids. You hear sad stuff too, like get a lot of people who have like autistic children and they think that they're getting abused by like a caretaker or something's going on at school and they want proof. Like there's a lot of sad stuff, but then you hear crazy stuff too. Like I had this one customer that would, back when we sold stun guns, and he would just buy like an absurd amount of stun guns. And like he would spend thousands and thousands of dollars on stun guns. And I just like couldn't understand it at all. But yeah, he was buying like specifically the pimp cane stun gun that we sell or that we sold. It was like a cane that had a stun gun at the end of it. It was really funny. So you get that, you get people who come in and they're saying like government's planting thoughts in their head.
Of course.
There's this recurring call that we get all the time, and I still haven't figured out the best way to handle it. But it's people who think that their neighbors, like that live above them in an apartment, they think that their neighbor is just following them around and listening to what they're doing and like trying to listen in through vents. Because like they hear footsteps above, like they'll be walking into a room, they hear footsteps above. Then they walk into a different room, they hear footsteps above, and they think that the person is like mimicking their behavior. We get that call so often that I just cannot believe it. Like it must be some sort of weird psychological phenomenon that has gone unnoticed because we get that call all the time. I need to contact some researcher at a university somewhere. But there are people who think that their neighbors have nothing better to do than to follow them around on like either above or below them and like monitor their every movement. Like they think their neighbors are just straight up spying on them nonstop. And
what are they calling you to buy? To like,
they're like, you got to have some sort of device that I can use to like listen through the walls and hear what they're saying, or there's got to be some sort of special equipment that'll let me see through the wall and find out what they're up to, or like what's going on here? Like, why am I being spied on? There's a lot of people that think they're being spied on by like government or who knows, or like an ex or something like that. And they're just 100% convinced of it. And I just don't know what to say to them. And if I say, hey, look, that's not physically possible because of the laws of physics or whatever, then they're like, oh, you're just in on it with them too. Yeah. I thought you guys were a spy shop and you're supposed to help me out. And I was like, dude, come on.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of tinfoil hat stuff coming your way. Tinfoil hat. Did you have to draw like an ethical line with your team members and say, if anybody crosses this on a phone call, we're done. We're not. Yeah, we can't help them.
We have a few rules. So if anyone starts swearing, like I just say hang up, because our customers get angry. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe they're stressed out. They get angry. I listened to a call the other day. I had to listen to it because something that went on, and this customer is just being super racist, and I just couldn't believe it. And so we had to fire him as a customer and give him a refund and convince him to ship this stuff back. It was annoying. Anytime somebody mentions something about spying on a spouse, we pretty much say, hey, look, we can't really help you. Because even though like people buy that stuff for that purpose, like so 99% of the sales like come through on the website, right? We have no idea why somebody bought something because we didn't interact with them at all. But if somebody calls and they're like, hey, yeah, I need to put a hidden camera in my bedroom because I think my husband's cheating on me, then we're like, hey, look, we think that what you're doing is illegal and we can't help you with that. And we just hang up. And so we do that. If you get a tinfoil hat person, you just say, hey, look, I'm really sorry, but you might want to hire a private investigator for that. Because usually that's really the only thing we can say. Because if we tell them they're crazy, then they don't really like that very much. But yeah, it's given me a newfound kind of sympathy for like police departments in particular, because they have a lot of crazy people calling them and saying that somebody's doing something or like there's behavior suspicious. Like police departments must have a whole protocol for dealing with people like that.
And that can't even be their job, right? They have so much bigger things to worry about.
No kidding. Yeah. But they're just constantly getting calls from paranoid people. It's wild. To answer your question about my favorite crazy story though. This is back when I worked in the brick and mortar store. I had this woman who bought like multiple hidden cameras, and she's like, yeah, I live out in the country and I have a barn and I have illegal aliens crossing from Mexico and they're staying in my barn as like a safe house or like on their journey north. They're like staying in my barn. And I'm like, okay. But she ended up buying like 3 cameras or whatever. And then she came back and she's like, yeah, I don't know how to use a computer. Can you play this footage for me? Because all the footage on a hidden camera saves to an SD card. And so I take out the SD card. I have nothing better to do. And I'm like, all right, I want to see these illegal aliens. And so I take the SD card, I put it in the computer, and the footage is like so dark. She has this camera like looking at the barn, and there's just like tree branch shadows like casting on the barn or whatever. And she's like, look, they're crawling on my roof, on the roof of my barn. I'm like, those are just branches. And then another footage, we'd like play the next file. And this is like a hidden camera inside the house. And it's her fumbling with the SD, like looking at the camera because she's like trying to set up the hidden camera. And it's her. And I can tell it's her. And she goes, look, one of the illegal aliens like found my camera, or immigrants or whatever you want to call them. They found my camera. And I'm like, man, that's you. And she just did not believe it at all that it was her. I'm like, I can't deal with this. And I'm just like, sorry, I can't help you.
Man. Yeah, I can only imagine that you probably have 30 of those stories. But when I scroll through, I follow like Nature is Metal, and some probably pretty like gory stuff on Instagram, as far as like what, it's just nature, right? It's real. And every time I see like the hidden camera photos of a mountain lion coming in and grabbing someone's dog, I just assume they ordered it from you, as far as like putting the camera on their house. And I'm like, I bet these stories are cool. I bet, a customer sends you a video of a cougar, eating their cat, that maybe that would make you smile. I don't know.
Yeah. So you've got the game cameras, which I see those footage, those clips. And I always laugh because the headline for the article on BuzzFeed or something like that is always like, hidden camera catches dog doing whatever, or bear doing whatever. Monkey's a big one. They always have monkeys on hidden camera. And I just crack up because the animal doesn't know it's hidden. Like, it's probably like plain as day.
Right.
Like they're not using hidden camera. It's just a regular security camera. Anyways, you get stuff like that. I've had people that have like set up cameras like outside their home or their business, and like they catch somebody like just stealing stuff or just beating the crap out of a car. I've had just a lot of really weird stories. And like another thing that's fun is like back when I worked in the brick and mortar store, like we would get celebrities that were like in town for like a football game or basketball game or something like that, and they drove by and they just wanted to pop in. So I got to like meet famous people. I see the orders that come in on Shopify, and I'm like, hey, I know you. You're a journalist at Washington Post, and you just bought like an audio recording pen. That's pretty cool. Like, they're trying to record something for political story. I don't know. It's cool to see that happen. When last week they like had these new audio recordings of Melania Trump. Like some friend of hers like recorded a conversation that they were having, and CNN had the audio on it last week. And so I like went to our back end and I'm like Googling the woman's name to see if she like bought a pen from us, because like back when that Omarosa did the same thing, she like recorded a bunch of conversations with Trump, and like people were convinced that it was a voice recording pen. And so like our sales of voice recording pens skyrocketed when that happened. And I'm like, okay, did Omarosa get this pen from us? Like whenever something like that happens, I check to see if they're a customer of ours. And sometimes I end up, satisfied. And other times I'm like, oh, they didn't get it from us. Darn.
So I've seen it as like certain athletes. So I've helped some people in the athletic world, and they'll send me, hey, look who bought from us today. And it'll be like the biggest names. And I'm like, man, you have like Tiger Woods' phone number. Like, that's incredible. You know what I mean? Like, dude, or I had a UFC fighter buy from us once. And the credit card said like medium on Shopify, like medium risk. And I raised my hand. I'm like, I'm going to call him back right now. And I just called back, just to say I spoke with this UFC fighter I liked. I don't know.
Yeah. I had so two things. One, Yeah, I'm surprised that the celebrities aren't more careful about their personal information on Shopify. Actually, Shopify had like 2 employees. You saw that, right?
I got an email from Organifi too that said we were one of the 10 stores that got hacked, and then I saw on Twitter Kylie Jenner's store was one of the ones that they took the information from.
Yeah, that's wild.
It seems like a matter of time, right? Before, I mean, why wouldn't that happen? Why wouldn't there be somebody who went and worked for Shopify and took this information and passed it on, right? Like, those
Amazon,
email lists could be gold,
Shopify.
right?
Yeah, Department of Justice just like found some, scam ring inside of Amazon. I don't even know, but and one more crazy story for you. One time, I had a famous actor buy a GPS tracker from us, and then like 2 weeks later, I saw like that they're getting a divorce on TMZ.
Wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like indirectly responsible for this.
Yeah, you could have your own magazine. I
keep getting people telling me to like start a podcast about like crazy stories and stuff. But to be honest, like a lot of the stories like kind of blend into. You hear the same stuff over and over and over again for like 11 years. Like you kind of get a little hazy on the details, but.
Well, I appreciate all the stories. I enjoy reading them on Twitter. In fact, you had one where you text somebody who committed fraud on you and said something about the delivery. I thought that was kind of neat how you busted him, committing fraud against you. I don't know. If you guys are on Twitter, go follow Alan for sure. He tells a lot of stories. And you kind of touched on it earlier. You talk to everybody. You reach out to everybody. And then you say, why wouldn't you just reach out? And all these people have helped you. Like I see it on Twitter all the time. Like big names just offered to help Alan Walton. I'm not sure what it is about you, but like everybody helps you. And I think it's like the coolest thing ever. And so like right on that tone, I want to know, you were on the Tim Ferriss Show, which is like oftentimes the #1 podcast on all of iTunes. He's got 500 million downloads. How did you get on the Tim Ferriss Show?
I don't know. I do know. It's just like, sometimes I wonder if it was actually a lot harder than it appeared, or like if it was like a luck situation. I don't know.
Look, from the outside, I see this happening often to you, and not just Tim Ferriss, but I see it on Twitter of like, why is this guy all of a sudden just like, I'm going to help Alan Walton? And I think you're a nice guy, and it's amazing how you get help from so many people. And I want to crack the code on that.
I mean, okay, this is interesting. I haven't had anyone bring this up to me before. So I think that being on Tim's podcast, because if you visit my Twitter, I have a pinned tweet from when I was announced as like a guest on Tim's podcast. And so I think when people see me tweeting or whatever for the first time, or they visit my profile and they see that, it's kind of like a status symbol kind of thing. Just because like who gets on his podcast? Like really famous or intelligent people. And I kind of stick out because I don't really fit those 2 categories. I'm a case study in starting a 4-hour work week style business, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so I shared everything I know on there. So if anyone wants to know more about like getting started, then you can listen to that. I've been told that it's a great episode, and I think it's a great episode. Probably my favorite episode of his. So as far as like actually getting on his podcast, I'd been a fan since like 2011. I remember I had overheard my dad talking about him, and I was like, "Who's this guy?" And I ended up getting a copy of 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Work Week. And I'm like, dude, this guy's really cool. Like, I like this guy a lot and what he's doing. And so I followed him for a few years. I started my business after, the 4-Hour Work Week business model. And I'd always thought that it'd be cool to like just get his attention or whatever. And I also felt like I owed a lot to him because his work kind of like opened up the possibility of working for myself and employing people and having this great business and traveling and meeting other cool people, just living a really cool life. I didn't have that prior to like when he came along. Like I was just kind of like, in the system, right? And he kind of opened up this world to me. And so I felt a debt of gratitude to him, and I kind of wanted to get in front of him because who doesn't want to meet the heroes? And so I remember there was a help a reporter out. So if you're not familiar with that service is, basically a couple times a day, you can get an email with reporters, journalists, bloggers, whoever, and they're looking for requests, like for an expert source or whatever that they can cite. And there was a writer for Forbes who was looking for people who were running a $1 million business, like $1 million in revenue with no employees. And I was like, oh man, I might actually be able to get a link from Forbes or like an article on Forbes, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that see this request and actually like, can fit that request. And so I reached out. The woman's name is Elaine Pofelt, and she ended up doing this article on $1 million solopreneur businesses. And the funny thing is, all 4 of those people were inspired by the 4-Hour Workweek. And so it actually kind of turned into, like, you load up the article and it's got a giant photo of Tim Ferriss. And I'm talking about how I started my business. And so I was like, dude, so the article came out and I'm like, great, I got on Forbes and I have a backlink that's going to help my SEO. But it doesn't look like anyone's really looking at this page, because it only had like 2,000 views or something like that after a few days. And I was like, I want to get this in front of Tim. And so I set up alerts on my phone so I could be notified if Tim was tweeting. And when I saw that it was not a scheduled tweet, it's just him like asking for feedback or whatever, I would pop in and I'd put a link to the Forbes article and I'd say, Tim, I was covered in a Forbes article and I mentioned you as being the inspiration for starting this business. And he retweeted it after it got his attention. I had to do it a couple times. He retweeted it, sent it out in his email list, put it on Facebook. It ended up getting hundreds of thousands more views than prior to that. And it just kind of like got me on his radar, I guess. And we had so much interest in that article that Forbes made that like a recurring piece. And I'm giving you the long version by now. If you've not realized that by now, this is the long version. But she ended up getting a book deal, $1 million one-person businesses. And I was in that book, and the publisher, I guess Tim was also like under the same like umbrella publisher or whatever it is. And Elaine and Tim became acquainted, and she was like, hey, look, you haven't done any 4-Hour Workweek case studies on your podcast. You've done them on your website in the past, but it's been a long time. And apparently it was like a really hot topic still. Like he still gets a lot of interest in 4-Hour Workweek case studies and whatnot. It's what he's known for, among other things. And he decided that he wanted to do some case studies episodes on his podcast. And I guess he remembered me, or I think Elaine might have given him a list of some of the people that said that they were inspired of his book. And I ended up getting a phone call from Elaine, and she was like, hey, Tim really wants to do an episode with you on like a 4-Hour Workweek case study. Can you come down to Austin? And it was like a last minute thing. So I just hopped on the bus, went down to Austin, recorded the podcast, super nervous. We chatted for like almost 3 hours, and it was very cathartic, and it was a great experience. And I got a lot of feedback, and I had a lot of random people emailing me, and became friends with a lot of those people, have done business with some of them. And it was just a really great experience.
Well, I mean, look, it's I would relate it to, anybody who's not familiar with Tim Ferriss, which they should be. They should go read the 4-Hour Workweek. It helped me too. But like, that's top of the notch, right? That's like getting on the Joe Rogan Experience, right? Like a lot of people want to be on Joe or want Joe to mention them, and then he calls it the hug of death, right? So did you experience the hug of death after Tim Ferriss? Did your sales blow up and you couldn't, keep in stock of things? Was there any like business ramifications? I mean, obviously it was an amazing experience for you, right? To be able to meet, somebody who essentially guided your journey, but what was the lingering effects? What do they call it? Second world effects? Is that what they call it? What happened because
second
of that?
Order?
Second order, yeah.
Well, I guess you have the first order, which was like, did it like give us a bunch of sales? And no, it did not, because and I knew this going into it. I was like, look, we're not going to do a sales bump from this, because I've had media in the past, right? But I was like, look, only people who really need our equipment are like going to buy it. Like people don't buy our stuff just because it's fun or whatever. They have a few $100s to throw around and buy a hidden camera. They need it because they buy it because they actually need it. And so I was like, look, we're not going to get any sales out of this. Now, it did end up being our best sales day ever, but it wasn't like, oh, wow, life has changed forever kind of thing. And so we did get a bump. I'm not even really sure how popular that episode was because a couple weeks after it came out like first or second week of December, I guess. And at the end of December, he was like, here's our top 10 episodes from this year, 2018. And like 8 of the 10 most popular episodes were like the ones that were sandwiched my episode. And so it's like my episode stood out of the one that was not in the top 10. But why would it have been, right? But if you look at like the number of listens and whatnot, then it was like the guy before me had a ton and the guy after me had a ton, but me, not so much. Which is fine. Like not everyone wants to listen to like a 4 work week case study episode. The guy on before me, I'm pretty sure was LeBron James. So I think people are really interested in what he has to say.
He's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Look, I'm shocked though, as a podcast host, even just what I've done so far, like 15 episodes of this show, let alone I've had a couple others. The ones I think are going to be amazing and like they're interesting to me are my worst episodes. And they're ones I'll have certain people on where I'm like, this is something people really need to pay attention to, and they don't perform. I don't know if it's like the headline is wrong or what, or the beginning of the show starts out, and it's not even that because the listens aren't even there. So I don't know what it is. It's
and
weird.
that's like based on downloads. Is that
just looking at downloads, and then there'll be other ones that go bananas, and I don't know why. Is it just happened to catch the right people on the right week where they had some free time to listen to podcasts?
Yeah.
Like I'm a junkie and I can't get to all of them, right? And so I don't know what it is, man.
Well, I mean, to answer your question about like what all came from that. So I did get a lot of email. I responded to everybody. It took me some time, but I did get a lot of email, and a lot of really cool people messaged me. So like, for example, I had mentioned on the episode, like a band that I listened to while I was like building my online store. Like I would be up late at night, like working on building this website and writing product descriptions and whatnot. And I'd listen to this one album over and over. And then like the producer for that album emailed me and was like, hey man, I heard you on Tim's podcast. That was really funny that you mentioned the band, and like, how's Texas? I'm thinking about moving from California. And so it was really cool because we got to trade a couple emails. I've had people that like I've looked up to for years, like now we've become friends because they heard me on that podcast and they thought it was cool. I had a lot of really great feedback, and I've had people in different countries all over the world, and they're like, hey, yeah, next time you stay in New Zealand, you're staying at my place and we're going to hang out and I'm going to give you a tour of Auckland or whatever. I'm like, wow, dude, this is great. I have friends in all these like places and I've never met any of them, but they're being really cool to me because they got a lot out of the podcast episode. And so, it's also helped like get more coverage. Like after the episode came out, now, like if I want to be like kind of, cut through like to like a reporter or a blogger or a podcaster or whoever, I can just be like, hey, yeah, if you want more info about me, here's me on the Tim Ferriss podcast. And they're like, oh, okay, so this guy actually like is he knows something. What is that something? I really don't know. I think I'm just really good at like weaseling my way into like upper society and like just like kind of putting myself out there, and I just kind of get a little lucky, I guess. But yeah, if there's one thing that I talk about, or if there's one thing I could say about like getting on the Tim Ferriss podcast, because people do ask me that a lot. I mean, that was like a multi-year thing, right? Like from that first time where I got his attention on Twitter to like when I appeared on the podcast, that was like 3 years later, right? And every now and then there were like these little touch points. Like I had actually met him at a conference like a year or two before I was on the podcast. And so maybe like because we had met in person, even though he didn't know who I was, because all I did was go up to him and shake his hand and be like, Tim, thanks for everything. And then that was it. Meanwhile, everyone's trying to get him to sign books and like get him to like pitching him and stuff. I'm just like, Tim, thanks for everything. And he saw my face, and I kind of have a weird face. To bring it full circle, to bring it full circle. I have a weird appearance, and maybe that stuck out. Like had been multiple touch points over the years that may have indirectly related to me ultimately getting on the podcast. And so what I'm saying is, like, I tried getting his attention. I put in the work, and it took a lot of time, but eventually and there was certainly luck, but you kind of like create your own luck, I guess, is a common saying.
Yeah, I think it's being authentic too, right? Like the way you just mentioned what you did for Tim at that conference, it happened the same thing to me. I went to Traffic and Conversion Summit. The very first time I ever went, the very first thing I ever saw was Billy Jean. And if you don't know who Billy Jean is, go look him up, become a genius, because the guy's amazing. Yeah. He put on one of the best presentations I've ever seen. The whole room's energetic and we're screaming and all kinds of stuff. And we got done and everybody runs up there because he's giving away something for free, right? He's giving it one of his courses for free on a USB or something like that. And all I did was walk up and I'm like, that's one of the greatest things presentations I've ever seen. And I gave him knuckles and walked off. And like 2 days later at Traffic Conversion, he walked up and he just started talking to me. And like it's totally different, right? Everybody wants to go up for an ask or a photo or what can you give me, rather than, just being grateful, right? And so, you being grateful there and being yourself, I think means a lot to people.
Yes. That's typically what I do when I meet somebody that like, it's always weird, like meeting your heroes, right? I've done that like quite a few times, actually. Just because, I don't know, I put myself in a situation where like maybe I can get a little bit lucky with, and like get a little bit of FaceTime, have a short conversation. And so, I don't know, I've always been really awkward in life, to be honest. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up or anything like that. And I'm introverted, actually. And it's always been really hard. And so like I studied social skills. I studied like what kind of like sets you apart from other people. And like one of the things that really sets you apart when you're like meeting a hero of yours is like just being totally normal and chill and just having a cool conversation with them, because everyone else has an ask. They want money. They want attention. They want to feel validated somehow. And like when I met Tim, or when I met like I like Ryan Holiday a lot, and John Romanello, and like I could name a bunch of people that like I studied their work for years, and then eventually I was able to like meet and hang out with them. Yeah, on the inside I was freaking out, but on the outside I'm just like trying to have a cool conversation and be friends with them, and it has definitely worked because that just kind of keeps happening in life, where I meet people that I look up to or people that I want to be friends with, and as long as you're cool and friendly with them and not going for an ask right away, then generally they're like pretty open to
Yeah, there's a business lesson here too. Do the same thing with your customers. Treat them authentically nice and give them everything they want long before you go for an ask. But personally, like when I've met my heroes, and maybe this happened to you too, it took me a long time to realize they were just people. I have this like compare-itis where I put people up on a pedestal, and I'd be, dying inside having to meet them. And then honestly, some of them were disappointing. Like, and I think it wasn't even disappointing. It was like, they're all just winging it. Number one, everyone's just fucking winging it. Nobody has done more than anybody else. They're all fucking winging it every single day. And then some of them are just shitty fucking people when you actually meet them in person, and they're not authentic to themselves. They're not the persona they put out there in marketing. I don't know. I had a lot of marketing gurus, and I'm sure you can think of some people who are big in the marketing space. And I met a few, and they were shitty. And that, number one, it made me sad that they were shitty. They weren't this hero I looked up to or somebody great. Number two, they were just fucking winging it, which made them like kind of normalized for me. But it took a long time for me to hit that third point of like, we're all just people. Like we're all just doing the best we can every single day with the information we have at present. Did you find any of the people you encountered, and you don't have to name names, but like some of them weren't everything you hoped they'd be?
Yeah, that's happened. Actually, most times I've been really lucky in that somebody who I've, wanted to get to know or like have a conversation with, like everyone's ended up, not everyone, most of them have ended up being just as cool and as interesting as I thought they would be in person. So like a lot of people wonder like, dude, what's it like, hanging out with Tim Ferriss? And I'm like, dude, he's great. I mean, if you like Tim, he's exactly who you think he is, right? He's not putting up a front, super open, a lot of fun, funny. It was a great time. And I can say that about most of the people I met. I did have one person that I looked up to prior to starting SpyGuy. I probably shouldn't say his name, so I won't.
Don't do that.
I gave away to Hida. But I saw him speak at this conference, and I was like, dude, I actually like this presentation a lot. And he was the same age as me, but way more successful. And I was the youngest guy in the whole conference, other than him. And so I'm like, oh, look, we're like both the same age. So maybe we can like kind of relate to each other on that. We're at this conference or whatever. So I go up to him and I'm like, actually, this is one of those situations where I was like, hey, I could use a little bit of help because I'm new to this whole thing. It was at a marketing conference. And I'm like, hey, I'm actually trying to figure this out. I could really use a little bit of help. You sound like you know what you're talking about. Are you around later that maybe we can just like chat for like 5 or 10 minutes? And then he was like, no, I actually got to like hop on a private plane and go. I got to leave town. I only flew into town to do this 45-minute conference or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, but you could just email me here. And I end up emailing him and I tell him what's going on. This is when I was starting the online store for cheaters. And I'm like, hey, look, might be a little in over my head here. I could use a little bit of help. And he ended up just forwarding the email to like some business partner of his. And then like a couple hours later, I'm on like a conference call with like 5 people that he's associated with. And they're trying to get me to like give up equity in the company in exchange for their marketing services. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I just wanted to like chat for like 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, not give up 30% of a company that I don't even own. And I was like straight up like that. I'm like, I don't even own this company. I'm just building this for them. And they're like, oh, okay, well, who's the decision maker over there? And I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah, another example of you should provide value before you go for an ask. That's actually happened to me too. Somebody I looked up to and asked for advice, and they were like, yeah, sure, 20% of your company, and we can talk once a month. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I didn't know who this guy was when I saw him speak at the conference. I just thought, I was like, hey, I got value out of this talk, and can we chat? Like, I can relate to you. And but he's notorious in the marketing space for just everyone disliking him. But I didn't know who he was when I did that.
I can't wait till this call is over and I can ask you who that is. Yeah. That's going to be great. Look, so there's a bunch of other things I want to ask you about here. Like, you went on to create your own product, and you didn't have like the greatest success with it. I still see it on your homepage, right? And so I'd love to like hear even a couple takeaways. Number one, so it's a hidden camera finder, right? I remember you posting about it, and I was like, this is a genius idea. The ones on the internet are horrible. This has to get you press. And it didn't quite go that way, right? And so like I'm a big proponent of the people I consult with of like sell other people's shit, find out what's working, find out what's not working, create something better, and then start selling that as your own product, which is exactly what you did. Like, what did you learn from the fact that it didn't quite take off the way you hoped it did?
Yeah, so there are a few things. Number one, most of what I sell are electronics. And so a couple years ago, when I started looking into actually making our own stuff instead of just reselling, I wanted to manufacture not a hidden camera finder. I wanted to make a brand new hidden camera based on an idea that I had that would greatly reduce the price of the cameras, and then also like just provide a better experience for our customers. Like that's what I wanted to do, but I'm not technical at all. And all of these like sourcing agents and stuff in China and these different events, they're not good at electronics. I tried like 5 different sourcing agents to try and help me get this hidden camera idea off the ground. And I just couldn't make it happen at all. They mostly do like soft goods and like clothing products and bags and whatever. I just couldn't find somebody to do the electronic stuff that was necessary. And so I was like, okay, what can I do that's easier? And eventually I settled on a camera detector. And so it's for people who travel. My product is called Scout. It's for people who travel and stay in Airbnbs and hotels or wherever. And they just want to make sure there's no like hidden camera inside, because prior to COVID happening, I would get Google alerts all day long for the term hidden camera. And there was like a new article every day for somebody that found a hidden camera in an Airbnb. And we already sold a lot of camera detectors. And I was like, okay, this is probably the simplest product I can make that, because the electronics are simple, it doesn't have to connect to the internet. It just uses AAA batteries instead of like rechargeable. So it's a little bit easier. And I started working on that product. Electronics is hard, man. There's a reason that, you never hear anyone talking about manufacturing electronics. It's just really hard, especially when you don't know how electricity works, like me. But the cool thing about being on Tim's podcast was that I had mentioned on the podcast that I was having problems with making my own products because I'm not technical. And I had a bunch of people reach out to me saying, hey, I can help you bring a product to market. And one of the guys that listened to me, he reached out and he goes, hey, I'm down here in Austin. I exclusively help people bring electronic products to market, and we could do everything for you because we have a China back office and we can do all of our manufacturing over there. And so it's like, you're just working with me down here in Austin, and then I get taken care of you and with the manufacturing side of things in China. You don't have to stay up at midnight anymore trading emails and like doing Skype sessions. And I'm like, oh wow, that sounds amazing. And language barrier issues. And so I just had them do all of that for me. And so we came up with a product. Took a little bit longer than we would have liked, but whatever. I was learning this stuff for the first time. And we ended up launching the product. It actually came out a year ago this month. And there were a couple things that went wrong with it. So we did have a good launch. Like, we were at the top of Product Hunt, which is, something else we could talk about maybe. But I'd never paid any attention to Product Hunt whatsoever, but we launched it on there, and then it hit the front page, and then I ended up getting on like a television show because somebody saw me on Product Hunt. I ended up on like Yahoo TV or something like that. They had some tech show, and they interviewed me on there, and had a bunch of VCs contact me. It was really weird. I wasn't expecting Product Hunt to work that well, but like, we were good at like generating a little bit of media attention, not a whole lot. And I think, so as far as like lessons learned from that whole thing, well, number one is don't launch a product for travelers right before COVID. And then number two is, I'm not pretty sure. I'm 100% sure that we overpriced it when we launched it. So the product that we were replacing, so we already had a hidden camera detector. It was selling for $150, and I start making Scout, and I'm like, what are we going to price this thing at? Because our cost on it's actually really low. And I've always heard people say like, yeah, you want like margin, you want to do like a 4x markup, ideally nothing below 3x, and keep pumping up the profit margin if you can. And you can always start high and then lower the price later if you ended up overshooting it. Whereas if you start low and you need to raise it, that's a lot harder, right? And so I remember posting on a couple of places on like private communities, and I was like, hey, look, I have this product coming out. I don't know what to price this thing at. I'm thinking of about $29. And I see all these responses, and they're like, no, dude, this is easily worth like $99 to somebody who's traveling and staying in an Airbnb in a hotel or whatever. And so I launched it at $99, and like the profit margin on it was great, right? But we've never really sold all that many of them. And one day I was like, okay, we got pricing wrong. Like, nobody wants to pay $99 for this thing because there's something that is functionally it does the same thing, and it's selling on Amazon for $29, but it looks like crap. And ours looks really good. Like, I hired a designer he'd done work with, is it OXO or OXO? They do like home kitchen appliances and stuff like that. They do really cool looking products. And he designed Scout for us. And I thought it was a great looking product, and I didn't want to sell it for the same price as everybody else. So then one day I was like, all right, let's just do a buy one, get one free offer, right? So you buy one at $99, and then you get a second one free. Did amazing. And then we upped the price back up to where it's just $99 for one. Didn't do so well. Did the buy one, get one free? Did amazing. Then we just changed it to $49 one day on our website. So huge price drop, right? It's a 50% price drop. Went from 100 to 50. And it's done really well since then. We're moving way more units. Even though nobody's really traveling or anything like that. We're selling more units at $49 with no travel going on than when we had it priced at $99 and travel was, as free as it ever was. And so pricing's hard, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, look, I was super excited for you. I thought $99 was fair. I think I even commented on your ECF forum thread that that sounded right. Like, I was super pumped for you. This makes a ton of sense. I do wonder, did someone look at it and say, this little thing with red lights on it is $100? Like, maybe that's their opinion they went with.
Did.
But
yeah,
I always try to look at things at value. What value is it bringing you? Like, you said you saw articles all the time. I see them all the time. I'm not even in your space, that there's hidden cameras in Airbnbs and shockingly in a lot of hotel rooms. Right. And so, it's surprising that, the value isn't there, right? Like, the value of someone finding that hidden camera is well over $100, right? And so I was kind of shocked when it didn't work out so well for you. I didn't know what Product Hunt was either. You reached out to me on Twitter and were like, "Hey man, go bump this on Product Hunt." I was like, "Sure, what's Product Hunt?" And I went and bumped it for you. So I was shocked it didn't work. I see it, like you said, at 49 on your site now. I'm glad it's selling well. As a guy pre-COVID, I traveled a lot. Like, it was on my radar. I was like, I could probably use one of these, So I'm shocked. Yeah, I'm sure it was a lot of lessons learned. I'm sure you sat on a lot of money for a long period of time, and
fortunately, it's paid for itself. I did a big personal loan when we started manufacturing it. I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to get my money back? Unfortunately, we did. But yeah, again, the product that I was trying to replace it with was, we were selling a lot of them for $149. A lot of them, like 10 times as many as Scout at $99. And maybe that's just because, like, that other product had a bunch of reviews though, right? Scout's a new product. And one of my big problems is a lot of my customers don't want to write reviews. They don't want to say what their first name is. They don't want people knowing what they buy. That's why we don't do social media at all. Like, I have a Twitter account. I have a Facebook account for SpyGuy. We don't post anything because, well, number one, I'm really lazy and I just never really put any effort into social media channels at all. But
it seems like you could capitalize on just stories that are out there. You don't have to share your customers. Just like
that's our new tactic.
You said Omarosa earlier, right? Like, if you just ride alerts that are going on, or BuzzFeed, right? There's going to be something that relates to you constantly happening.
Yeah. So that's something that we're working on. I haven't been putting as much effort into SpyGuy as I should have in the past. And I'm really trying to clean up on that. And that includes, like, creating content and I just rode the Google Ads way forever, right? And that's been fun, but it's not nearly as, great as it used to be. And so we do need to invest in content. We do need to start promoting that, like, on social media channels. I think that we could probably do pretty well on that. And
hit me up after. I might have something for you on that end. Super cheap, and she's awesome.
That'd be great.
We're kind of running pretty long here, which is awesome. I do want to ask you, there's two other topics I want to talk to you about. So I know you're in ECF, but am I wrong to say you're in other communities? And, like, can you touch on what those communities have meant to your growth? Obviously, ECF has been huge for me. I've had multiple people on. In fact, I'm interviewing Andrew Udarian tomorrow, which I hope to put out in a few weeks. And so I love ECF. I think it's one of the best communities I've ever been a part of. But, like, are you a part of others? And, like, how did that help you in your journey along the way? And I know you love travel. Am I right to assume you're in Tropical MBA's group there over there too? I can't even remember what that's called anymore.
Yeah, so
Dynamite Circle, is that right?
Dynamite Circle, or the DC for short. That's just what everyone calls it, the DC. And I joined the DC back in 2015. Back when I was starting SpyGuy. Gosh, I'm coming across a lot of things that I wish we had time to talk about. When I had started SpyGuy a couple months in, I wasn't making a whole lot of money, but I ended up getting an apprenticeship with a guy that did paid ads for a living. And he just worked at his house in a suburb of Dallas. And he was managing huge accounts like See's Candy. Like, you know what See's Candy is? Mm-hmm. I had no idea what See's Candy was. I asked him, and he's like, yeah, it's just some chocolate company like on the West Coast. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I ended up getting a PPC apprenticeship with this guy. And I'm managing ad accounts for See's Candy and Simple Human. They do like home goods as well. Trash cans and whatnot in the kitchen. And he taught me everything that I knew about paid ads for the first few years of my business. And the car drive over to his place was really long. And I must have typed in like lifestyle business or Tim Ferriss or something like that in the podcast app and stumbled across Tropical MBA. And I turned it on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that there was a podcast in a community for people who were building lifestyle businesses. Blew my mind. And I just like devoured that podcast. And a few months after I started listening to it, they're like, yeah, we're doing a live event in Austin, because Austin was kind of like becoming the entrepreneur hotspot. and we're doing a live event in Austin, and I'm like, dude, I gotta go. And so we go. I go and meet up with all these cool people that I've been listening to on this podcast. And we're doing this mastermind thing where we're talking about all our different businesses and offering up help. And it's just an amazing community. They have an online forum. It's not as active as e-commerce Fuel, but it is really good. And it's just for people who run location independent businesses. And so you get people who run agencies or who have really popular YouTube channels, or they're writers or crypto and all sorts of wild stuff, e-commerce, FBA businesses. And they do these events year round, not this year, obviously, but they do like 20 events a year in little DC hotspot communities. So they have over 1,000 members, and they'll do events in Barcelona, Hong Kong, Austin, New York. Bangkok is a big event that would be going on right now. But it's like every time they do this event, it's like they rent out the Conrad Hotel in Bangkok for a whole week, and you're just at Entrepreneur Summer Camp sharing business, secrets that nobody wants to put out on the internet, and you're just like in a conference room sharing all the stuff that's really worked out for you and your business that year. And it's just so much fun. I love that community a lot. I guess you're not a member, but you might want to look into it, because there's a lot of really cool people in there, and they've really changed my life. So big shout out to TMBA, Tropical MBA Podcast is the name.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of their podcast. I've listened to a lot of their episodes. I started way back. I mean, when I was in when I first started and I took that drop shipping course, a lot of people lived in Thailand. That was kind of the thing, and that was certainly my dream out of the gates. I'm gonna be on a beach somewhere and make $2,000 and try to keep sand out of my laptop or something in Thailand. I don't know. I bought into the whole experience, and that led me to Tropical MBA. And I was like, oh, these guys are actually like talking about owning a real business while living location and independent. I met Justin Cook from Empire Flippers at a retreat I was at. He was big on it. He was trying to push me to join it as well. And so, yeah, I've heard a lot of good things. It's nice to actually, I don't know if I have talked to anybody that's been part of it though, besides Justin Cook. So I can tell just by looking at your face, you're excited about
e-commerce. There's a little bit of Andrew's in the DC. You're talking with him tomorrow. Andrew's in it. Eric Banholz from Beard Brand. Nathan Barry from ConvertKit. He's the CEO. Yeah, he's spoken a bunch. It's a great group, and what I really like about it is that everyone realizes just the power of location independent business ownership, and it doesn't matter, like it's not e-commerce really like e-commerce Fuel, and so you get a lot of really great exposure to other ideas and trades and skills and stuff, and how other people are making a living and what they're doing that you might be able to take back to your e-commerce business. Plus you're staying in really cool places too, like in Thailand. And
I'm a big fan of Jay Abraham, who that's how he made who he is. He consulted in different areas and then brought what was working in this area over to a completely different area. And so there's 100% value in like getting in a room with somebody who's not in e-commerce and hearing, their tips, tricks, and tactics and what's working in their business, and then going, oh, well, that could totally work for me in my business, right?
Yep.
And I've considered DC BKK mostly because I just love Thailand. I've been there like 4 times. If COVID wasn't happening, that would be happening next month or in December. Like I love Thailand. And so, yeah, maybe I will. Maybe you've convinced me. But like, are you part of any other communities? It holds a special place in my heart, man. ECF has been so amazing to me. The first course I ever took had a pretty decent community in the beginning, at least. It sounds like you're part of at least a couple of those. I almost want to start one myself, just to surround myself with these people. It's amazing. Even DTC Twitter, I would say, is very similar to that. There's just a community there.
Yeah, DTC Twitter is pretty cool. A lot of e-commerce operators sharing what they've learned, and those are really the only paid communities I'm a part of. There is one that I will recommend to anyone who's interested in like developing hardware products. It's by a guy named John Teal. His website's Predictable Designs, and I think his community is called the Hardware Academy, and it's good. Like his whole community is about bringing hardware products to market, and like most of the stuff you see online are like software startups and whatnot, because they're a lot easier than hardware products are. But for anyone who's interested in developing like a product with electronics in it, his community is really good because there are a lot of people who are technically minded and know about this sort of stuff, but maybe they don't have like the business acumen or like the mindset or personality type or whatever to actually go out and like build a business from scratch, right? But they can be like your CTO, or they can teach you about like, oh yeah, this is how we do printed circuit boards over here versus like this method over here. Like it's a really good community for people who are trying to do hardware related startups. And I was a member for a while and I learned a lot on there, but once I found my hardware partner, I was like, I don't really have a whole lot to contribute here anymore.
Sure. And like ECF, you were one of the first ones ever, right?
Yeah. You can ask Andrew to verify, but I'm pretty sure I'm like the third member to join after him and Bill D'Alessandro. But yeah, ECF has been life-changing. It's fantastic. I post on Reddit from time to time. Most of the good stuff is under like a username that I don't even like, nobody would know it's me. Just anonymous. What is it? Just an anonymous account. But there are some like interesting discussions that happen on Reddit from time to time, but lately it's just turned into a pile of crap. A lot of entrepreneurs. There used to be some really good info in the past though. Those are really, those are certainly the only communities that I pay for, E-commerce Fuel and the Dynamite Circle. But, over the years, I've gone to like different conferences and whatnot that have introduced me to a lot of people. And then they'll invite me to like their conference that they think I might be able to get value out of. And so like in a way that's kind of like a community, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I know plenty, and I was one myself for a long time who didn't have community. And when I found ECF, I was a little worried, right? And I went to New Orleans kind of on a whim, and immediately Andrew shoved us into groups, and I'm definitely going to bring this up tomorrow. Like he made us go into different groups. Like, last year I was in a group of Ben's, and the year before that it was like people who were in like what he had us do a survey of what you're interested in. I wrote golf. I like golf, and so he put me at a table with everybody who liked golf, and my partner Brian was at a sailing table. He's a big sailing guy, right? And he forces you to have dinners. He forces you to have lunch with other people, and like the community aspect of that just stuck there for me. I was like, man, it's lonely. In the essentially Minneapolis, St. Paul suburbs in Wisconsin, it's lonely here. I don't really know anybody. We have our little Minneapolis group, but entrepreneurship is lonely. And once you finally get like plugged into that world with other entrepreneurs, it's amazing. Like I said, I truly think I found my people.
Yeah, man, I'm in North Texas and we have like nobody here. Like I don't know a whole lot of entrepreneurs, but whenever I go to an e-commerce field event, it's like a high school reunion kind of thing. Maybe I don't know that it's a high school reunion because I'm chatting with these people constantly online, right? But I only get to see them like physically like once a year. But everyone's great. I love the community. Everyone's so giving, and you learn a lot, man. And I think that Andrew's community is certainly atypical. Like I think most online communities aren't nearly as put together as his is.
Well, I think it's because of his rules, right? He keeps anybody out that hasn't at least done X amount of numbers, and that number keeps going up. I think he only allows 7-figure store owners.
Yeah, I remember when he let 5-figure store owners in. I remember that, and you can hear it in his podcast intro too. He's like, e-commerce fuels podcast for 5- and 6-figure entrepreneurs, and now it's like 8. So he's worked his way up the chain, which
it's cool, curated, and a lot of it has come out of it for me. Like I just recently partnered with Leanna Patch. She was doing a lot of copywriting on my business, and I was like, why don't you just come in here and be a partner? It's a pets business who deals with a lot of cats. As you may know, she loves cats, and so it worked out pretty well. I'm actually going to have her on to kind of talk about how we structure that. But lots come out of that community, including like the last topic I want to talk to you about. I'll start with a story.
Real quick, I got to get this in there because you'll love it, and this just goes to show you the power of like internet relationships. But e-commerce field earlier this year in San Antonio. Can you believe that was earlier this year? Mm-hmm. Wow. Anyways, I've traded a lot of DMs with Taylor Holiday from Common Thread, and really cool on Twitter. And I remember he was chatting with somebody towards the end of the conference. It's like, man, I haven't had a single opportunity to talk with Taylor. And we're like Twitter buddies or whatever. And so I go up to him as he's in the middle of this conversation. I'm like, hey, man, we're running out of time here, but I just had to say hi to you in person because we chat all the time on Twitter. But I'm Alan from SpyGuy. And I could tell when I started talking, he didn't recognize me at all. But then once I said who I was, he got like the biggest smile and then stood up and he's like, come here, man. And he like gave me a giant hug. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this feeling. Like, it's so cool to just be friends with somebody online that you meet in person and just instantly like embrace them. What a cool thing.
I'm a big fan of Taylor. Taylor was actually on the show, episode 7. If you want to check it out, his journey from minor league baseball to what he's doing now is pretty incredible.
Very cool.
That was a cool podcast. He needs to come back on, much like you. We ran out of time before we ran out of topics. So look, the last one I want to preface with a story. I was going to an event, as we're talking about, and I'd never ever, I wasn't big on flying. When I was a kid, I was poor. We drove everywhere. We had one vacation a year and it was to the same place in Colorado. And so I don't think I even flew the first time till I was like 25. And so like I'm 31, 32 going to one of my first ever conferences. And I don't have a seat. I'm a big dude. So coach is not friendly to a big dude like me. I don't have a seat. I get up to the counter. I'm wearing what I'm wearing now, a white, I pretty much wear this every day, a white t-shirt, Under Armour shorts. I probably look like a slob, and I was waiting on my seat, and the lady was just being mean, just awful to me. Sir, wait in line. I will get you your seat when it's time. Just, you know how it is. And 5 minutes before boarding starts, she walks over and hands me a first class ticket. And I was just shocked. I was like, I think you made an error here. And she's like, no, we're going to bump you up. Have a nice day, sir. And I was like, what, and I look like a slob. Right. And so I walk on the plane, and I sit down in my seat, and the lady, I looked at her and I was like, do you want window or aisle? I didn't realize in first class that, people book their own damn seats. They don't care where they want to sit where they're sitting. And she gave me the biggest, like, who the hell are you look I've ever seen in my life. I sat in there and I immediately start working on my Amazon products on my computer. And before the end of the flight is over, I'm helping this lady's business. She ends up owning a business. She's from Minneapolis. I'm helping her like grow her business by the end of this flight. And I was just like, holy shit, like the people up here are my people. Like I could not believe I met the quality of person. Later on, I end up like hooking her up with my friend in Australia and expanding her business internationally just by, fortuitously getting bumped up to first class. But I got off that flight, let alone the second leg, I was like shoved into 3 seats with my business partner's wife. That was awful. And I came home and I just said, I'm never going back. I will never, ever sit in the back of the plane again. I don't know how I'm going to afford it. At the time, that was just not something I could do. And right around there, I had heard you talking about airline miles. And I was like, well, how do all these business owners keep talking about airline miles? And I don't even know what I'm talking about. I was putting everything on a Bank of America, like 1.5% card, which I thought was pretty good. I was getting money back. And I heard you talk about it, which initially got me to start using an Amex Gold card. And that was like the beginning of my journey of like, what do we do with these points? And then I ran into you at ECF New Orleans. And it's the first time I ever met you. And I'm like, you're Alan Walton. And I'm sure you get that all the time. Yes, I am.
No.
And I was like, you're Alan Walton. Can I talk to you? And honestly, you didn't seem too thrilled to want to talk to me at the time. I'm glad we did actually talk and get to know each other. Dude, it was like 6 a.m. after the last night. It was really early. There were still drunk people sitting on the couches, and you were clearly just not in the mood to talk to me. Anyway, but we talked, and you clued me in on some like point hack strategies, which to me now seem pretty basic, and I know you go even deeper than that. But I just want, number one, I want to thank you, and I want to share it with our audience. I want to get people even just the basics. The one thing you taught me was like take an Amex Gold card. You're going to get 4x on your first 150,000 in spend on ads, on shipping, on a bunch of different things. And then, so I was using Amex and then booking through Amex. And I was like, this isn't that great. I have free points. Great. And you were like, why don't you ship those off to your local airline, whichever the one that is. And for me, it was Delta. And so that's when I went, like the light bulb went off, right? So I can book a first class round trip ticket pretty much anywhere in the country in Minneapolis. And I know Delta's there for 40,000 miles, which is kind of nothing. And then I started seeing you post, hey, I can get you to, whatever country across the world for even like, not much more than that. And so if you could share any tips you have, cause you truthfully changed my life. Like I haven't flown anywhere but first class since then. And I haven't paid for a flight in as long as I can remember. And so I'd love for you to share that. Cause like that gift you gave to me, if we can give that to even just one person listening, it changed my life to be able to, number one, I'm a fucking big guy. And so like to be able to sit in a seat where I fit and not feel awkward leaning into somebody next to me, that alone was enough. But to be able to sit up there and just some of the people I've met, like business owners that I've been able to have conversations with that I never would have thought I would even have the chance to talk to just by happening to sit next to them or behind NFL players or like UFC fighters or athletic writers. I've kind of been lucky, I guess, on who I sat next to. Or maybe you don't. Maybe that's just who you belong talking to up there. But I want to give that gift to somebody else. What would your top 5 tips be? And then do you have a website for FlyGuy? Do you want to send them to FlyGuy, which is also the most amazing name?
Yeah, we'll talk about that FlyGuy in a minute. But I know we've kind of spoken for a while now, so I'll try and be concise. But I do have to say that being able to fly like in business class, first class, like it's amazing. Like it's really cool. And I never thought that I'd do that. I just thought I never thought I'd leave the United States up until like 4 or 5 years ago. Like I was like, I just don't have any need to do it. But much like you, I got started with the Amex Gold card and I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. And Tropical MBA had an episode about 5 years ago with a guy, his name's Eric, and he had a business booking flights exclusively on points. So it's like a booking agency, except they don't, buy tickets for you. Instead, they use the credit card points that you have, and then they'll tell you the best way to redeem them. And so he kind of gave like a primer on what cards to sign up for, what expenditures you should put on which cards to get the most points, and then how best to redeem those points. And it was like an earthquake moment for me, because I was like, oh wow, I can actually like travel like to other countries in first class, and I never thought I'd do something like this. And so you meet a lot of really cool people in first class, because people who fly first class are doing interesting things that have the money to pay cash for first class ticket typically. And so like I remember one time I went to France with my wife and my brother and his wife a couple of years ago, and we were hanging out in the Amex lounge, and Billy Gibbons was in there from ZZ Top, and everyone's going up to him asking for autographs and whatnot. And he was right next to me, and I just casually started chatting with him, didn't ask for an autograph or anything. And I got to hang out with Billy Gibbons for like 20 minutes before we ended up being on the same flight together. It was pretty cool. And so as far as maximizing your points, so I imagine most people listening to this are in e-commerce. And so if you have expenses that are related to shipping, then the Chasing Preferred card and then the Amex Gold business card are going to be the 2 cards you want, because the gold card will give you 4 points for every $1 you spend on shipping and online advertising, up to like $150,000, right? The thing is, once you hit that cap, you can just ask them for another card, and then you got to redo it all over again.
Yeah, so I just found that out recently. Right before I left the company I was in, we had one clearly maxed out. We were spending $30,000, $40,000 a month just in one category, let alone all the categories. And they were like, yeah, why don't both of your business partners each get one? And why don't you get just 2 more for you? And I was like, wait a minute, what? Like we can just continue getting card after card after card? That seems bananas to me.
Yeah, you can open up another LLC if you wanted to, and then that one can get a card. And I've done that as well. And so I have multiple gold cards now. Just I put shipping expenses on it, and our Google ad spend goes on there too. And then the Chasing Preferred card, you get 3x points for those charges as well. And so what's great about those 2 cards for business owners, and you could do this with personal cards as well, right? That if you like flying Southwest Airlines, then the Chase Southwest cards are going to be great for you, because if you're a business owner and you're spending a decent amount on your business, then you can get the companion pass, which is basically 2 calendar years, where if you get a ticket on Southwest, it doesn't even matter how you get that ticket. If you paid cash for it or use points, then you can have somebody travel with you for free for 2 calendar years on Southwest Airlines. It's ridiculous. Such a great deal. But with the Chase cards and the Amex cards, they generate their own points, right? You have Chase Ultimate Rewards and you have Amex Membership Rewards points. Well, you can use those points in those 2 programs to redeem travel on dozens of different airlines. And they both typically, Amex has their own airline partners, Chase has their own airline partners. There's a little bit of overlap, not a whole lot. But most people, what they do wrong is, and you mentioned this, is they'll use the points on the travel portal. So like they'll go to Amex Travel or ultimate rewards, and then they'll look for the specific date, time, flight that they want, and then they'll redeem the points for that ticket. The problem is that's how you get the least value out of your points possible. The way you get the most value is if you transfer the points from Chase or Amex into an airline partner program, like move them to British Airways, move them into American Airlines. Actually, you can't move them into American Airlines. What am I talking about? Move them into British Airways, move them into United. If you have Amex points, you can move those points, well, you can do this with Chase as well, but you can move points from Amex, for example, where you're already getting a 4x bonus, right? So like, let's say you spend $400,000, or let's say you spend $100,000 on your gold card. Well, now you have 400,000 points, right? You can move those 400,000 Amex points into British Airways. And what's great is Amex often has transfer bonuses. So they'll have a 40% transfer bonus a couple of times throughout the year. So your 400,000 points suddenly becomes like 560,000 British Airways points. You don't have to redeem those points on British Airways flights. And that's the thing that's like the second layer that boggles people's minds. The first is you don't have to redeem in the travel portal. The second thing is whatever points you end up getting, whether it's United points, whether it's British Airways or Air France or whatever, you can use those points on any of the to book tickets on any of the airlines that are in that alliance. So I'll use my British Airways points to book flights on American Airlines or Japan Airlines or Cathay Pacific or whoever else their partners are. And that's just how you get the most value, because each of the loyalty programs, they have their own, it's called an award chart. And it's they're typically like a fixed price to redeem a reward. And so you might see a flight that is in the travel portal that costs like 200,000 points or something like that. But if you actually transferred those points into the airline program, you might be able to get the exact same flight, or at least one that is flying like 3 hours later. Like not the exact same flight number, but the same route. You might be able to get it for only like 60,000 points instead of 200,000. That's a lot of savings. And so those are my 2 big points is, well, I don't know how many points that is. You got Chase and Amex. Those are the 2 programs you really, really want to be in. There are a few other ones, but Chase and Amex, and then you want to transfer those points out to the different airlines, depending on like where you want to go or what route you want to fly or what airplane you want to fly or whatever. Start there, and then if you have any questions about this, I mean, just message me on Twitter. I love talking about this sort of thing, and I can try and point you in the right direction. As far as you mentioned FlyGuy. FlyGuy is like a side project that I started about a year ago, where I help entrepreneurs book really super badass flights using the points that they're generating from their business. And what's been really cool about it is how happy everyone is about the service. And whereas SpyGuy, nobody wants to talk about like, hey, I just bought a hidden camera. Like nobody wants to say that on Facebook or anything like that. The people that we're booking flights for are like really grateful, and they tell all their friends about it. And so I haven't even like made a website for FlyGuy yet. Maybe I'll have one up by the time this podcast comes out. I do have a domain. It's just flyguytravel.com. There's nothing there at the moment, but I've been able to grow that business without doing really anything since I announced it, because I initially brought on like 10 customers or something like that, who were generally just friends of mine that I've met at events and whatnot. And they sign up and then they tell their friends about it because they like it so much. And what's been cool about it is that I've been able to meet a lot of other entrepreneurs I might not have known about otherwise, because they want to try the service and they sign up for it.
Well, pre-COVID, I don't know how it's going in COVID, but pre-COVID, this would blow people's minds when I would talk to them. Like I remember being part of a mastermind last year, and they were all like, "Hey, what time did you get in?" And then somehow it came up that I flew in on first class, right? And I would be like, "Yeah, but I don't pay for it. Are you guys paying for your flights?" And everybody in the room was like, "Yeah, we all pay for our flights." And I'm like, "What? What? You're all business owners and you all paid cash for your coach ticket here? Like, and so I would just tell them what I knew and it would blow their mind. Like, there's a real need in this arena, I think, for somebody to come out there and have FlyGuy or you could have tons of informational content out there. The one question I wanted to ask you is, I had dinner with, or a couple questions. I had dinner with Bill D'Alessandro when I was in Charlotte, and he told me about the partner airline. So is that something like, I can't remember the exact reference he had. So he's in Charlotte. I believe that's an American hub, and you can't transfer out to American. So he had to transfer to British Airways, perhaps, or some other airways. And then he had to book on their website to book his American flights in America and use those points. Like, can you give a couple examples of what that is? Like those partners there?
Yeah. So not every airline, but most of the airlines are in these alliances, right? And so you have, the Star Alliance, which is airlines like United and Lufthansa and ANA and several other ones. And then you have the One World Alliance, which is like British Airways and American Airlines, Cathay, Japan, Qatar. And you could use the points from one airline to book flights on another airline that is also in that alliance. And so British Airways, for example, if Bill's spending a bunch of money on an Amex Gold card and he wants to transfer that out to British Airways, he can go ahead and do that. Now, British Airways, you can go to their website and you can use their search feature, and you can find basically you'll just key in your airport codes, right? And so Bill's in Charlotte, he'll type in CLT and say like he wants to go to Rome or Frankfurt or wherever, right? Paris. And instead of going to the American Airlines website, he'll go to the British Airways search website. He'll type in the dates that he wants to go, what class he wants to fly in and whatnot. And then it will show you all of the partner awards. So partners of British Airways. And American Airlines is one of them. And he's in an American Airlines hub. And so he would be able to book tickets on the British Airways website using his British Airways points to fly on American Airlines. And what's cool about the different programs, and man, this is a really complex topic, isn't it? Like, I would love to really go in depth in this, but we're running up on 2 hours, and I'm feeling sorry for whoever's listening to this. But what British Airways is a distance-based program, whereas a lot of programs like American Airlines is a region-basst program. So like going from America to Asia or America to Europe. British Airways is distance. And so the shorter you fly, the fewer points that you'll spend. The longer you fly, like from Dallas to Tokyo, which I've done a number of times, the more you'll spend. And so redeeming British Airways points for American Airlines flights within the United States is like one of the best things that you could do. Like, I fly my mom from Dallas to Savannah all the time using my British Airways points to fly on American Airlines. And it's only $7,500 for a coach ticket. $7,500 points for a one-way ticket. And then 15,000 points for a business class ticket from Dallas to Savannah, which that's like almost nothing really in the grand scheme of things.
That's less than $4,000 spend if you spent it on Google Ads or shipping. Or look, that's amazing. I have two more questions. Number one, getting on the medallion status for Delta is kind of important, right? And so when you move these out of Amex Gold and into Delta, and you book them on Delta in points, you don't get any like credit for that flight. And so is there any scenario where you would book it on Amex? Like, is there a ratio of like, okay, I can get it for 40,000 if I book through Delta in miles. I can get it at 52 if I book in the Amex Gold card. And then I'm going to get 4,000 plus the credit, moving up the statuses in Delta. Is there like a ratio where you say it makes sense to book in Amex Gold and it's essentially like an Orbitz portal? Is there a point where it makes sense? Is there a number, like a ratio that you use where it makes sense to get that? Because like I did that within 10,000 points or something like that. I would always book on Amex, and now I'm a platinum medallion member on Delta, which allows me into, their nice little area in every airport. And so is there something you think about there, or is it strictly you're always trying to get the best deal?
Yeah, I tend to just focus on the best deal, and none of my clients have really voiced like a need for airline status or anything like that. And so that's something that I really don't know a heck of a lot about. You probably know more about it than I do at this point. I've looked into it, like elite qualifying miles and all that other stuff. And generally it seems like if you fly a lot, then it definitely seems like something that's worthwhile. But if you don't, like me, I take a few big trips each year, but that's really it. And so I don't really pay too much attention to the status games. And I have friends that have in the past, but they've largely dropped off. And I asked them why, and they're like, yeah, it was just a big struggle to maintain. And so that's not really my skill, unfortunately.
Yeah, none of the perks did anything for me, right? Like a lot of it's like free check bag, which you get in first class anyway, or first aboard the plane, which you do in first class anyway. The only one that like stood out to me is, again, I've gone to Thailand a few different times, and to be able to sit in lounges in Seoul, South Korea, or in BKK, or wherever you're going, and like to be able to sit in the lounge rather than sit out, somewhere that's maybe not so air conditioned, especially BKK I'm really thinking of here, to be able to sit in an air conditioned lounge with good Wi-Fi, have food, free drinks, like that's kind of nice. And so, yeah, that's the only way I would say the only perk I've seen that I liked.
Well, at BKK, I mean, they have lounges that you can hang out in. Depending on which airline it is that you're flying, but I'm always in a lounge at BKK. And BKK airport is really nice. You might be thinking of that other one, the DMK airport.
No, I've never been there. BKK, I can picture most of it's nice. When you're doing like in Thailand travel, you end up taking like these walkways that go all the way down, and you're like sitting in a basement, and then you ride a bus out to the airplane. I don't know. There was points there where I definitely enjoyed the lounge more for sure.
Okay.
I've never been over to DMK or whatever that other one. I've never been over to the smaller airport.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, most of the time when I'm traveling, the ticket that I have, like, it has lounge access. And so I'll just be hanging out. Like if I'm going to Asia, then I fly Japan Air a lot because we have a direct from Dallas to Tokyo. Otherwise I'm going to have to like fly on Cathay or whatever and then stop in California. But I just find that the Amex Platinum pretty much gets me into a lounge if for whatever reason there's not one for the airline that I'm flying.
And it might even be that, right? Like I flew Delta One last time I went to Thailand and back, and I know right on my ticket it was like you can use the lounge, right? And so I had a real quick layover in Detroit, and after even being in Delta One, I needed a shower when I got to Detroit after the 20 hours in a plane, and so it was nice to go into their lounge and take a quick shower, and it's nice. So the last question I have is more on the personal side. I know you brought this up, so I have a 2% Citi card. I enjoy getting 2% cash back. Another great option in your business is the Capital One 2% card if you just prefer cash. What do you say on the personal side? Is there something on the personal side that is equal to 4X that you get on the business side?
The Amex Gold card got revamped like a year ago or something like that. The personal one, that is. And if I'm not mistaken, that one gets you 4X on grocery spend in restaurants. And I spend a lot on groceries. So that's definitely the card that I use. And then the Chase Sapphire Preferred is just like such a good one as well. I mean, you could do the Chase Sapphire Reserved, but that one has, I think it's like a $550 annual fee now, which is just really expensive. But I tend to really focus on the business spend because that's where I'm really spending a whole lot of money. The personal stuff is, for me at least, it's mostly just like, gravy. Like I don't spend a whole lot of time optimizing that. Before the Amex got rid of the Starwood card, I would use the Starwood card, and then they changed it to like the Marriott Bonvoy, and then they devalued it, and I'm just like, I don't even want to use that. So most of the stuff that I spend is on the Amex Gold Personal or the Chase Sapphire Preferred.
Yeah, I just rock the 2% card. I move literally everything I spend, no matter gas, groceries, anything I buy online, it's always on that card, and then I just pay that card off and certainly enjoy the cash back. But I didn't know if there was another hack. I mean, you're never going to spend the way you spend in your business, right? Like it's shockingly easy to spend $150,000 and get your 4X points. And if you spend more, get more cards. It's just an easy hack. And again, honestly, you changed my way of thinking about this, and I haven't been back, and I'm not going back. There is zero chance you'll ever catch me in a coach seat. The kids can ride back there. I'm not riding back there. Enjoy your iPad. I'm going to sit up here in a nice comfy seat. So, thanks for that, man. Honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great perk to entrepreneurship, and especially e-commerce entrepreneurship. I think we benefit more from it than typical entrepreneurs do. It's changed my life. It's taken me to countries that I never thought I'd end up at, meeting people I never thought I'd meet. And it's a great perk that I feel like is not talked about to, I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs that you and I are friends with don't even like know how good it can be, let alone somebody who's just now up and coming and working on there and just learning these things for the first time. It
happened the other day. Wednesday nights I played poker with Taylor Holiday and a bunch of other people, John Max Bowling, a bunch of people from Twitter that they're doing, I think, better than I'm doing. And they were making fun of me the other night. They're like, "Oh, first class guy, you only sit up front." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, what? How do I know this? And none of you guys know that your businesses are way bigger than mine." And so it's shocking that
they're
people
all marketers. Like they haven't know this.
It's shocking that most people. It's shocking people don't take advantage of this, and it's just such a nice perk. I don't know about you. I love travel. Whenever this world gets somewhat normal again, I'm going to be doing it again. I've got so many miles racked up right now.
Me too.
I think it's cool what you do for your employees too. I remember you referencing on Twitter that you give them a free trip anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world. I think once a year. Is that something you still do? Obviously maybe not right now, but is that something you do for all your employees?
It's actually, I hadn't thought about it in a while because nobody's flying.
Yeah, nobody's going anywhere.
I think it's 4 round trip tickets a year.
Wow.
I think that's what I have a lot of points.
But that's a really cool perk for your employees.
Yeah, it costs me nothing really, and it means a lot to them. So why not? Why not let them join in on the fun?
Well, look, we could carry on forever. Other than Twitter, which I'll put your Twitter link in the show notes. Is there anywhere like people can reach out to you other than Twitter? Any places you want me to post in the show notes for people to come find you?
No, the Twitter one's good just because I'm on there all the time. Anyone can feel free to email me. It's just Allen, ALLEN at SpyGuy.com. If there's something I can help with, just let me know, and I'll do my best. And I was on Tim Ferriss's podcast. We mentioned something about it earlier, and you can listen to me on there. A lot of cool stories. Was a great time. And then I also did an interview on the other podcast we talked about, Tropical MBA, and just talking about more of my story, I guess. And feel free to reach out. I like meeting new people, and especially people who are doing, cool things and willing to ask questions and put themselves out there. So just hit me up.
Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming on. Hopefully I asked you enough questions. It's been running long, so thanks for coming on,
I can't believe we hit 2 hours.
Thanks so much, Allen, for coming on the show. I hope you, the listener, learned something there about how to grow your business, or the ups and downs, or the crazy customers we all have. Certainly hope you pay attention at the end there to the travel miles part. It's been a huge part of my life. I think anybody who wants to get into entrepreneurship definitely probably wants to travel. And so, using the expenses in your business for you to be able to, sit in the front of the plane and travel wherever you want to for free, it's a no-brainer. So hopefully you paid attention there. Again, giving away copies of my last guest, Justin Christensen's book. Just head to AuthenticEcommerce.com. That'll go right to an opt-in page. Enter your email in there, and we'll shoot you a book. So I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I look forward to speaking to all of you again next week.